Welcome, friend, to this quiet hour where we gently peel back the veil of time, not to witness kings or battles, but to walk among those whose stories were never written down. Tonight's story isn't carved into stone, nor sung by skalds in great mead halls. It lived in wool and wood smoke, in the soft rhythm of hands weaving by firelight, and in the quiet strength of those who tended the hearth while the world remembered only warriors. Whether you're lying down to sleep or simply seeking a slower rhythm for your evening, I'm grateful you're here. I always wonder, where are you listening from? What corner of the world do you call home tonight? What time is it as this voice meets your quiet space? Some of you listen beneath the snow-heavy silence of Scandinavian skies, others beneath city lights or mountain clouds, or maybe beside the soft ticking of a kitchen clock. And somehow, through history, we've all found each other here. If these kinds of stories bring you peace, soft, slow, deeply human, I invite you to subscribe. There are many more stories to come, stories that whisper rather than shout, and remind us that history is not only what happened, but how it felt. Now, close your eyes if you like, and picture yourself standing beside a Norse longhouse at the edge of a fjord. The sun not yet risen, but the sky beginning to turn. A breath of wind rolling over the hills, cool and still thick with night. Mist drapes itself gently over the earth. The moss-covered roof of the longhouse steams slightly, where the warmth of the inside meets the cold of morning. And within, under woven blankets and woolen cloaks, a family still sleeps. The fire is only coals now, glowing softly like stars beneath ash. But not everyone sleeps. Someone stirs. She wakes as she always does, not with alarm, but with instinct. Quiet, practiced. She wraps a woolen shawl around her shoulders, pulls her hair back from her face, and steps carefully across the earthen floor. Her footsteps soft, her breath visible in the morning chill. There's no need for words, not yet. Only the low rustle of woven cloth, the muffled creak of timber overhead, and the steady rhythm of breath from those still lost in sleep. She kneels beside the hearth. The coals wait, low and patient, hidden in white ash. She presses dried moss and splinters into them and leans close, her breath gentle, coaxing. A curl of smoke, a flicker, and then the smallest tongue of flame rising with a sound like a sigh. The longhouse begins to stir, not with sound, but with warmth. Light stretches slowly across the beams overhead, shadows shift, and the faint outlines of hanging herbs, wooden tools, baskets filled with wool begin to emerge. The day is beginning, and with it, the quiet rhythm of the Viking homemaker, a rhythm that has echoed for centuries in silence. But tonight, we listen, we watch, and we remember. Because while the world outside celebrates warriors, inside this longhouse, another kind of strength is at work. And it begins with fire. She moves without hurry. The rhythm of the morning is not commanded by clocks, but by breath, by warmth, by the fire's mood and the light's slow return. Her hands are strong, but never harsh. They carry the memory of thousands of mornings before this one, bending, lifting, kindling, stirring. She sets a blackened kettle near the flames, listening to the metal whisper as it warms. The water inside is rain-caught, stored in a clay jar sealed tight with beeswax. It smells faintly of the forest, clean and cold. She lifts a sack of barley from under a bench, unknots the linen cord that binds it, and measures a handful into the bubbling water. The grains sink slowly, swelling with heat. They'll simmer into porridge soon. She stirs them with a carved wooden spoon, its handle worn smooth by years of use. The motion is slow, clockwise, always clockwise. A gentle creak behind her. She doesn't turn, but she hears the shift of weight on a wooden bench. A child, newly awake, still wrapped in sleep. Small feet touch the cold floor and quickly retreat under a blanket. A soft yawn follows, then silence again. The child doesn't speak, just watches the fire, drawn to its warmth like a seedling reaching for light. She smiles, but her eyes stay on the pot. It is a quiet smile, the kind only felt in the body, the warmth in the chest, the softening behind the eyes. She ladles a bit of hot water into a bowl filled with dried berries, blackcurrants, bilberries, rose hips, lets them rehydrate, swell slightly, take on life again. Above her, the rafters stretch like the ribs of a great beast, dark and heavy. Tucked into their beams are bundles of drying herbs suspended upside down. Angelica, yarrow, thyme. Their scent hovers just above the room, mingling with the smoke. On another beam, a row of dried fish hangs stiff and silent, glinting faintly in the morning light. The cat leaps up onto a bench, eyes narrowing at the rising steam. It settles itself into a loaf, tail curled nicely, body still. Its ears flick toward the crackle of the fire, then still again. Even the animals know this is a time for calm. Outside, the world stretches. A rooster's crow calls from a nearby pen, not proud or piercing, just part of the pattern. A breeze rattles the thatch above, whispering through the grasses and mosses that grow across the roof like a soft green blanket. The others begin to rise. Her husband first, stretching in the low morning light. Then the older children, each emerging slowly, rubbing sleep from their eyes. There is no hurry. There is only the fire, and the scent of barley, and the way the morning arrives one breath at a time. The bowls are passed around, wooden, smooth, warm from the porridge. The berries are spooned in, their color soft and purple. Sometimes there is honey, not always. Sometimes butter. Today there is both. A small luxury, a small feast. They eat quietly, seated low to the ground on woven mats or fur-covered benches. No one speaks much. Morning is not for stories. Morning is for waking the body gently, for filling it with warmth, for listening to the day as it unfolds. She watches them, spooning slowly from her own bowl, watches the way her youngest hums softly between bites, the way her husband blows across his spoon, the way the light slips in now through the high slit in the roofline and lands like a blessing across the dirt floor. This is her temple, this room, this longhouse, this family. The labor is sacred, though no one calls it that. She rises again, bowls gathered. A basin of warm water waits by the hearth. She rinses each one clean with a handful of soft moss and lye soap. Her hands, red from the heat, move steadily. The cat watches. Soon it will be time to begin the day's real work, mending, spinning, tending to the animals, walking to the well. But this moment, this quiet transition from sleep to life, is its own kind of work, a gentle birthing of the day, and she, its midwife. She opens the door a crack. A rush of cold air curl around her ankles, and light spills in, brighter now, full and soft. Outside, the world is awake, not in noise, but in presence. Birds move in the hedgerow. A goat bleats once, low and unimpressed. Smoke from another longhouse drifts slowly skyward, twisting like a ribbon into the pale blue of early sky. She steps out. The earth is damp but not wet. Her feet press in. The sun is higher now. Its light falls in long beams through the slats of the longhouse, catching the dust that floats gently in the air, a fine shimmer like snow in slow motion. The warmth of morning has settled into the bones of the home, quiet and steady, and the work of the day begins, not with haste, but with habit. In the far corner of the room, beside a narrow slit window cut into the timber, stands a tall, simple loom. It leans slightly forward, as if listening. Its wooden frame is worn smooth, the grain polished from years of passing fingers. This is no idle tool. This is a monument to patience, to skill, to memory. And beside it sits the woman of the house, her back straight but relaxed, her hands busy, her eyes soft. She does not look at the loom constantly. Her body remembers what her eyes once taught it. The threads run vertical in long, patient lines, the warp stretched tight by small stone weights that dangle like sleeping birds. Each movement is deliberate. Her fingers reach, twist, pull, return. The sound of weaving is not loud. It is soft and rhythmic, a whispering shuffle of wool, a gentle thunk of wood against wood. It is a heartbeat in wood and thread. It is the sound of continuity. Before the loom, there was the spindle, and before that, the sheep. The wool used here didn't come from market. It came from animals the family had raised since they were lambs. They were not pets exactly, but neither were they strangers. She had fed them by hand in the frost of winter, sheared them carefully when the spring sun came warm enough to loosen their coats. The wool was washed with ash soap in cold river water, then laid out in the grass to dry, combed with bone or wooden cards until it ran soft like river foam between her fingers. Only then did she begin to spin. The drop spindle is a simple thing, a weighted stick that spins like a slow-motion top. She sits by the fire, twisting the wool between her fingers, letting it run down in a thin, even line to the spindle below. It dangles, spinning in air, gathering the thread into a coil. There is something soothing in the work, something ancient. It is said that the Norns, the weavers of fate in Norse mythology, spun the destinies of gods themselves on such tools. Life and thread, wound and unwound. She does not rush. The wool tells her how fast to go, when to stop, when it is ready. The yarn is then dyed, sometimes, not always, but when color is needed, she turns to the earth. Onion skins for gold, woad for blue, madder root for deep rust red, lichen for gray-green. These are not bright colors, but they breathe with the tones of the land. She boils them in a pot above the fire, watching the dye seep into the fibers slowly, like ink into cloth. The smell is earthy, sharp, sometimes sweet,
a blend of forest and smoke. The dyed yarn is hung in coils from the beams to dry, bright against the shadows of the house. And then, the loom. Her feet planted firmly, her hands moving like water. The weft thread is passed over and under the warp, pulled tight, beaten down, over and under, again and again. Sometimes she hums as she works, a low tune with no name, older than song. She weaves patterns sometimes, small diamonds, waves, lines that ripple like the sea. They are not decorative alone. They hold meaning, a way to say, this cloth was made here, by these hands, for this child, this home. Children sit nearby, sometimes watching, sometimes mimicking with their own small pieces of thread. She shows them patiently how to twist, how to knot, how to feel the tension between the fibers. Not tight enough, and it will unravel. Too tight, and it will snap. There is balance in everything. The cloth she makes becomes many things. Tunics for her family, blankets for the bed, cloaks lined with fur for the bitterest nights. Every piece bears her quiet mark. Not a signature, but a feeling. The particular way she twisted the wool, the way her tension shifted slightly in the third row. Cloth is expensive in this world, not because of coin, but because of time. A single tunic might take weeks to spin, weave, and sew. Nothing is wasted. Every scrap is saved. Even old clothes are taken apart, rewoven, repurposed. The loom is more than tool. It is a kind of shrine to the unseen labor that holds the household together. While warriors polish their blades, she tends to the fabric of life itself, warmth, modesty, survival. Visitors to the longhouse often look past it, never noticing the loom. They might comment on the carvings along the beams or the skins hung near the door, but the loom waits patiently in the corner, as it always has, holding a history that doesn't shout. And when the day grows dim and the fire crackles lower, she places her weaving aside, not because it is done, it never truly is, but because the rhythm of the day calls her elsewhere now, to supper, to stories, to quiet. She covers the loom with a cloth, not out of shame, but out of respect, as one might close a book for the night, letting the words inside rest. She presses a hand briefly to its frame, the way one might pat the head of a sleeping animal. Outside, the stars begin to show. Inside, the house breathes slower. But the threads, they remain, waiting. And in the hush of night, you might almost hear them whisper still.
The wind has shifted by midday. It sighs softly now across the longhouse walls, a colder breath that speaks of changes. Leaves stir just beyond the door, their edges curling inward as the season turns its face toward autumn. Inside, the fire burns steady. Not high, not low, just steady. The sort of flame that understands its place. And above the fire, high in the beams where the smoke curls and softens, hangs the medicine shelf. It is not a shelf in the way we might imagine today. No neat wooden planks, no rows of labeled glass jars. Instead, it is a woven cradle of sorts. A shallow suspended sling made of braided willow and goat sinew hanging from the rafters like a patient spider's web. And nestled within it, bundles of knowledge, wrapped in cloth, tied with twine, hung with care. There is the bitter root of angelica, pulled in the first light of spring when its power is strongest. a bundle of yarrow, dried into brittle threads, a plant with 1,000 tiny flowers, good for stopping blood and easing fevers. Sprigs of juniper, sharp and fragrant, used to cleanse the air, to smoke a sick room, to push away bad spirits and worse smells. Dried chamomile blossoms, small and golden as sun coins, gathered in the warmth of midsummer and tied into sachets, for sleeping, for calming the stomach, for soothing fretful children. And lavender, not native, but traded for, cherished, its scent carried from far lands, crumbled into oils or steeped in warm water to quiet the body's unrest. The woman of the house reaches toward the shelf with the ease of long practice. She knows each bundle by touch, how it crinkles when handled, how it smells when opened. She selects a pouch wrapped in dark wool and opens it to reveal dried raspberry leaf, crushed fine, a tonic for women, a comfort passed from midwife to mother to daughter. There is no ceremony, but there is reverence. She does not call herself a healer, but healing is what she does. She knows which herbs should never mix, which will soothe a cough, and which will stop a heart. She knows when to pick and how to dry, and how to whisper to the leaves as she works, for sometimes the old ways say the plants grow stronger if they are spoken to kindly. She does not doubt it. On a small stool beside the hearth sits her apothecary bowl, carved from alder wood, its inner rim darkened by the oils and powders of many seasons. In it, she crushes dried bark with a round stone, stirring in honey to make a paste. She tastes a fleck with the tip of her finger, nods. Just right. A child coughs in the corner, tucked beneath furs. Not sick, but near it. She walks over slowly, dipping a cloth into a pot of warm water and pressing it to the child's chest, then slipping a pinch of the bark mixture onto the tongue. The child makes a face, bitter, but swallows, then closes their eyes again, trusting. She sits there for a moment, smoothing the child's hair with quiet hands. The movement is not medicinal, perhaps, but it is healing all the same. Behind her, the longhouse smells of thyme and peat smoke. Earlier in the day, she had walked the forest edge, basket in hand, seeking mushrooms. Not all are to be trusted, but she knows the ones that are safe, the ones that grow in birch shade with soft gills and hollow stems. Some she will dry and powder. Others will go into tonight's stew. She keeps bees as well. Not many, just enough. Their honey is medicine of its own kind, for wounds, for throats, for sweetening teas made of bitter herbs. She does not wear armor to collect it, only moves slowly, speaks to them as she works. The bees do not sting her. On a shelf beneath the herbs are other things, slavs in clay pots, animal fat thickened with comfrey or dock, a tiny jar of pine resin still fragrant, a knotted pouch of dried nettle used to make infusions rich in iron. There is no written book of recipes, only memory, only repetition. The wisdom is not preserved in ink, but in the body, in the way her fingers remember which root to choose, which boil to lance, which chant to murmur when the fever climbs too high. She sometimes is called to other homes, even across rivers, a difficult birth, a wounded foot, a cough that will not leave. She packs her pouch with care, a few dried herbs, a sliver of soap, a clean cloth, a carving of Thor's hammer for strength. She does not promise cures, only comfort, only the best of what she knows. And when she returns home, bone-tired but whole, she stirs broth with seaweed and brings it to her own children, who welcome her back not with words, but with the silence of trust. She knows, too, that healing is not always herbs. Sometimes it is rest. Sometimes it is touch. Sometimes it is singing in the low light while someone lies fevered beside the fire, unsure of what hour it is or if the sky outside still holds stars. She sings softly, not songs of battle, but songs of warmth, of dawn, of bread rising and rivers thawing. Her voice is low, a murmur beneath the breath of the world. And when the fever breaks, when the child stirs, when the color returns to pale cheeks, she does not claim the credit. She only stirs the fire, tucks the furs closer, thanks the herbs loud. Because the plants, too, were part of it. As the sun begins to slip toward the edge of the sky, she returns the bundles to their place above the hearth, wrapping each one with care. The smoke curls up and around them, carrying their scent to the roof beams. The cat stretches beneath her feet. Tomorrow she will gather more. The seasons turn, and with them the needs of the body shift. But for night, her shelf is full, her pots are capped, her fire is steady. She has healed what she could, and that is enough.
The light is beginning to fade. Outside, the last of the sun drapes its long, amber hands across the fields, clinging to every stalk of dried grass, every knot in the wood of the longhouse walls. The sky is a wash of soft blue and rose, quietly cooling with the breath of coming night. Inside, there is no rush, no closing of doors, no hurry to light lamps. Dusk arrives like a familiar visitor, unannounced but welcome. Its touch is soft and steady, brushing gently over woolen cloaks and clay bowls. And at the center of everything, the hearth. A shallow, stone-lined basin sunk into the earth. Its stones are blackened with years of use, soot resting like velvet on their rough faces. Ash gathers in soft drifts at the edges, feather light and ghostly pale. And in the middle, the fire. Not a roaring blaze, but a careful, living glow. It breathes. The flames rise and fall like slow thoughts. Coals shift gently, their edges pulsing orange-red, whispering secrets in a language made only of crackles and sighs. This fire is older than the house, older than the woman who tends it, perhaps older than memory. She kneels beside it, her knees resting on folded cloth, a bundle of kindling tucked beneath one arm. She doesn't look directly at the fire. She listens to it, the way one listens to someone asleep. Her hands move with care. She adds a stick, turns another, stirs the coals lightly with an iron rod worn smooth by years of similar motions. She has done this every day of her adult life, and yet it never feels dull. The hearth is not simply where food is cooked, it is where life is kept alive. Literally, on bitter nights, when wind screams down from the mountains, the fire is the only barrier between comfort and frostbite. Spiritually, too, the Norse believed that fire was sacred, a thread between worlds. The hearth was not just practical, it was holy. Children are taught to respect the fire from their earliest years, not just because it can burn, but because it watches. She has whispered to it, especially during storms, especially when someone is ill. Quiet words spoken into the smoke, promises, prayers, secrets. She's not sure who hears them, whether it's the old gods or the spirits of her foremothers who once attended fires just like this one, but she whispers all the same. In the center beam above the hearth hangs a small token, a carved face roughly shaped from driftwood. It has no eyes, no mouth, only the shape of presence. It's one of the landvatir, land spirits, protectors of place. It's been there as long as she can remember. Her mother never touched it, neither does she. When she rises, her hands carry the scent of smoke. Not unpleasant, familiar, the smell of home. Her apron, too, bears the faint trace of it, as does the child who sat nearby watching her, eyes wide and sleepy. At the fire's edge, a small iron pot hangs from a hook. Its belly is rounded, blackened. Tonight's meal is nearly ready. A thick soup of barley, leeks, and salted fish. Not extravagant, but warming, nourishing. She stirs it slowly, the wooden spoon moving in time with the crackling of the fire. Steam rises in quiet plumes, curling like ghost breath toward the roof beams. The longhouse fills with the scent of earth and salt and comfort. There are stories, of course, old ones, that say the hearth is a doorway, that in the very heart of the flame, between ash and ember, something else lives. Not a god exactly, but something watching, waiting, listening. She doesn't fear this. She sets offerings by the fire sometimes. A piece of bread, a splash of milk, not much, just enough to show gratitude. The hearth has seen everything: birth, sickness, arguments, laughter. It holds no judgment. It only glows. In winter, she and the children will sleep nearer to it, drawn toward its gentle heat like seeds to sunlight. In those long, silent nights, the fire seems to think for them. Its flickers soothing, its warmth wrapping the longhouse in a stillness deeper than sleep. It's not unusual, on nights like that, to dream of fire, not as destruction, but as memory. Flickering scenes from years past, a mother's hand stirring porridge, a sibling laughing with cheeks flushed from the heat, a grandparent's voice murmuring stories while coals breathed slow beside them. When morning comes, the fire is never fully out. A good hearthkeeper knows how to bank it, to spread the ash just so, to leave a hidden coal smoldering in the center, ready to catch again when the first stick is laid. This is the hidden fire. The ember that survives the night. The memory that endures sleep. It is not much to look at, a dim red glow beneath a bed of ash, but it is enough. Enough to wake the warmth again, enough to remind you that even in deepest night, something waits to rise. Sometimes, when she sits by the hearth alone, the woman imagines all the fires burning across the land, one in every longhouse, every cottage, every hut tucked beneath the fjords and forest edges. All those small glows scattered like stars, each with its own hands tending, each with its own story unfolding beside it. And when she breathes in the scent of her own fire, she feels connected, not just to her own kin, but to something older, something shared, something eternal. The fire does not speak, but it remembers. And as the shadows grow long and the hush of evening settles once more across the thatched roof, the fire waits. Steady, slow, patient, to carry the family through the dark once again.
The wind has stilled. In the quiet that follows, the longhouse feels more like a cocoon than a shelter, wrapped in warmth, hushed by the low rhythm of wool brushing wool. In one corner, lit only by the amber flicker of the hearth, a woman sits with her loom. Not a grand structure, not one of those upright looms saved for communal projects, but a smaller frame, nestled across her lap, its wood worn smooth by years of touch. She doesn't rush. There is no need. No one waits with a clock. Time passes here in threads and rows. Her fingers move with memory, not thought. This work is not taught in words, not learned in books. It is absorbed through the hands, through the eyes, through sitting beside someone older who once sat just like this, in just this light. Wool, softened by lanolin and carded with care, is drawn into yarn. It spins between her fingers with a rhythm as old as language. There is a sound to it, a soft hiss, a whisper of fiber finding form. She dips her hand into a shallow basket beside her and lifts a skein of dyed wool, a blue not found in the sky, not in the sea. A blue born from woad leaves, soaked and fermented until their bitter green deepens to something cold and pure. The process is slow, messy, alchemical, but it is worth it. Color is precious here. Every hue is earned through patience, through knowledge, through plants that yield only once a season, or roots that must be pulled before first frost. She threads the blue into the weft, passing it through the warp threads with a gentle sway of her shuttle. Over, under, like breathing. The textile grows row by row. Not fast, not showy, just steady. Every stitch is a choice. Every pattern a message. Some are simple bands, clean and practical. Others are more intricate. Diamonds, chevrons, small symbols that only she knows the meaning of. Perhaps they mark a marriage, or a child's birth, or a journey taken and survived. Textiles speak, not in loud voices, but in quiet lineage. A baby's swaddling cloth might carry the same pattern as their grandmother's shawl. A man's winter tunic might be edged with the colors of his clan. A belt woven with red and white might recall the sacred thread used in old rituals, to bind, to protect, to remember. This is not decoration. This is identity. Even the simplest strip of linen carries weight. It tells of land, which plants were grown, which sheep were sheared. It tells of weather, which years gave soft fiber, which ones brought coarse wool. It tells of hands, who spun it, who wove it, who stitched its seams by firelight. On the far wall hangs a length of flax linen, pale, almost colorless, but not blank. In the right light, you can see the faint shifts in weave. A mistake here, corrected by doubling back. A looser thread there. Maybe the wool was thinner that day. All of it speaks. And then there is mending. She lifts an older tunic from a folded pile. The elbow is worn through, not torn, but thinned from years of bending. She threads a needle with dark thread and patches the hole with care. This is not shameful. Mending is a kindness,
a promise made to a garment. I will not throw you away. I will remember the hours it took to make you. I will give you new life. Children watch her as she works, sometimes silent, sometimes curious. What does this pattern mean? They ask, pointing to a line of small X's near the hem. She smiles. It keeps the bad dreams away, she says. They nod, satisfied. They will remember that one day, when they sit at their own looms. There is singing, sometimes. Not songs for performance, but work songs. Simple melodies that follow the rhythm of weaving. Songs that start without thinking and end in silence. They are passed down like thread too, one line at a time, one generation at a time. And when she is finished for the night, she does not sigh. She does not stretch her hands in weariness. She only smooths the cloth, folds it, and places it gently beside the hearth. The firelight catches on the wool. It glows softly, like moss in the sun, like the edge of a dream. She tidies her tools, the shuttle, the comb, the spindle that spins like a quiet star. And when the longhouse settles once again into hush, the only sounds the breath of the fire, the distant call of a night bird, the creak of wood cooling, she smiles just a little, because the cloth will last. The thread will hold. And when morning comes and the mist slips once more over the roof like a second thatch, the loom will be ready again, waiting, patient, just like her.
The room is quiet, more quiet than usual, not the hush of sleep or the peace of a long day's end. This is a different kind of stillness, heavier, slower, wrapped in breath that seems to come from deeper in the chest. Someone has died. We do not know who, a husband perhaps, a child, a sister. But in this moment, it doesn't matter. What matters is the care that follows, the care that begins when life ends. And in a world without morgues, without funeral parlors or doctors, that care falls into the hands of the living, often into the hands of women. In the longhouse, the air is cool, not cold, but watchful. Outside, someone has covered the door with cloth, a dark curtain to mark the passage of a soul. Inside, the hearth still burns, but lower than usual, the flame respectful and still. The body has been washed. Water warmed gently over the fire, poured into a clay basin, touched with sprigs of juniper or sweetgrass to calm the scent of death. The one who bathes the body does not rush. She does not flinch. Her hands are steady and quiet and sure. There is tenderness in this, the same tenderness used to wrap a newborn, to bandage a wound, to knead bread. She washes the hands first, each finger, each nail, then the feet, slow, circular movements with a damp cloth. There are murmurs sometimes, low words that may be prayers or songs, or simply the sound of someone remembering. Hair is brushed, gently, with strokes that echo the care given in life. And then the shrouding begins. The cloth has already been prepared, not made in haste, but set aside months or years ago, woven for this moment. Sometimes it is linen, sometimes fine wool, always something made by hand. The wrapping is slow, layer upon layer, folded with the grain of the body. Arms are crossed over the chest, eyes closed, lips softened. The dead do not look like they are sleeping, but they do look at peace. There may be tokens placed nearby: a comb, a knife, a coil of bronze. Not always grand, not always valuable, but meaningful. These are not offerings of wealth, they are messages, pieces of a life given gently into the keeping of death. Outside, someone prepares the burial site. Not every Viking was sent to sea. Most were laid to rest in the soil, beneath mounds, or stones, or earth packed with care. Some are buried in boats on land, their final voyage taken not on waves, but on memory. And always there is thread that binds the cloth, thread that stitches the pouch of offerings, thread that links the living to the dead. In some places, a cord is tied around the ankles, not to bind, but to guide. A tradition older than God's, a symbol of the soul's journey. It will be untied before burial. Loosening the knot, they say, helps loosen the spirit's final tether to this world. She does it gently. She may cry, or she may not. Grief has many forms. But there is a ritual here, a quiet choreography passed down from mother to daughter, from neighbor to neighbor, through centuries of repetition. The burial is quiet. There are no trumpets, no speeches, just the sound of soil meeting cloth, the thud of earth returned to earth, a rhythm older than language. Afterward, the women clean the house, wash the cloths, stir the fire back to fullness. They might bake something, a flatbread perhaps, to share with the mourners, a small act of nourishment, of continuity. And life, in its quiet way, resumes. But for days, or weeks, or even years, the thread remains. Sometimes, literally, a bit of the burial cloth saved in a pouch. Sometimes, invisibly, woven into dreams, into memory, into the hand that stirs the porridge or braids a child's hair. Vikings believed in many afterlives. Valhalla for some, the quiet halls of hell for others. But for most, the focus was not on glory, it was on remembrance. Did the dead eat in peace? Were their names spoken? Did the fire still flicker where they once sat? The woman who tends the body does not need to answer these questions. She only needs to care, to clean, to wrap, to honor. In that way, she becomes the thread itself, connecting this world to the next, not with grandeur, but with love. And when years from now, her own body lies still, and her own cloth is unwrapped, someone else will take up the task. Someone with gentle hands. Someone who remembers. Someone who understands that even in death, there is beauty. Quiet. Soft. Woven into the hush of a longhouse where fire still glows, where stories still linger, and where the threads of the dead remain unbroken.
There is a hush in the house today, not of sorrow, but of listening, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath, waiting for the kettle to sing. Outside, the wind is high, sweeping across the fields with a voice full of change. The summer is beginning to bend into fall. The air carries the scent of drying hay and distant smoke. The harvest is near. Inside, a woman tends to her herbs, Not the lush, sprawling gardens we might imagine. These are humbler beds, tucked along the longhouse wall or pressed between stones where the sun lingers longest. The plants are not grown for beauty, though some bloom in yellows and purples that catch the eye, but for knowledge. A row of sage, thick and silver green, a spray of meadowsweet, its blossoms pale and frothy. Angelica, tall and strong, standing like a sentry by the door. She knows them all, knows when to pick them, not too early, not too late. Knows how to dry their leaves, how to bind them in bunches and hang them from the beams above the hearth. The longhouse smells of them, sharp, sweet, bitter, deep. Her fingers carry the scent even after washing. She reaches for a linen pouch. In the side is dried yarrow, its crumbling petals faintly golden. She drops a pinch into a wooden bowl, adds a splash of vinegar, and begins to mash it with the pestle. The mixture will be pressed into a cloth and laid across a boy's swollen ankle. No potions, no charms, just yarrow, just care. This is not magic in the way of stories. No lightning, no spells, but there is something sacred in it all the same. She brews tea with nettle and wild mint, not the polished leaves you might find in modern cupboards, but rough and whole, stems and all. Poured into a clay cup, the liquid turns warm green, earthy, steadying. The sick drink it. The tired drink it. The midwives drink it too, between labors, their eyes heavy but sharp. In the back of the house, tucked beside the firewood, there is a narrow shelf of jars. Not glass, but sealed pots, each one marked with a slash or a knot of string, her own system of signs. Inside are dried roots, powders, resin scraped from pine bark, the sticky drippings of honeycomb. She keeps a piece of linen soaked in honey for wounds, another with goose fat and crushed garlic. When a child's cough becomes deep and rattling, she warms a bit of lard, adds thyme and mustard seed, and rubs it into the chest with the heel of her hand. Always slowly, always with rhythm. The motion soothes as much as the salve. And the bread she bakes? It too has meaning. Sometimes she folds in ground seeds, coriander if it's on hand. Sometimes dried berries, a touch of sweetness to coax back an appetite. In the colder months, she stirs in fennel or juniper, not for taste alone, but because she remembers. Fennel stirs the stomach, juniper clears the lungs. Even the ash from the hearth is saved, not wasted, mixed with water and used to clean, or sometimes with animal fat made into a rough soap. Nothing is without purpose. Nothing is too humble to matter. She knows stories too, not always spoken, but felt. That mugwort under the pillow can ward off bad dreams. That chamomile steeped long enough will calm a colicky baby. That a bundle of dried rosemary burned slowly can keep illness from a house, or at least help those within breathe a little easier. And when she steps outside, apron tied, basket in hand, and walks the narrow path beyond the smokehouse, she moves like someone who listens with her whole body. She bends low to gather plantain, fingers brushing dirt from its roots. She hums, maybe. Not a song exactly, but a tune shaped by habit. She does not need to know where it came from. It came from before. From all the hands that once gathered these same leaves, once crushed them in stone mortars, once whispered over the steam of healing broth. She is part of that line now. In the evenings, when the work is done and the fire glows low, she sometimes sits with other women. They swap advice, small secrets, a new way to bind a wound, a trick for calming fever. Sometimes they talk of deeper things. How a certain herb seems to bloom near graves. How a root, when boiled too long, turns the broth sour and sharp. How some plants only answer to women. How others seem to bloom only when they are needed. It is not superstition, it is memory, carried in the hands, in the gut, in the heart. In the dark corners of the longhouse, bundles of herbs swing gently on cords. They dry slowly, losing color, but gaining strength. They will be used in weeks to come, or not. Either way, they hang like prayers, quiet, invisible, waiting. Not every cure works, not every sickness lifts, but that is not failure, that is the world. She offers what she can: warmth, rest, steam, broth, a poultice pressed with care, a story, a lullaby, a hand across the brow. She does not ask to be called healer. She is only a homemaker. But in her basket are medicines, in her cupboard, magic, and in her silence, knowledge. The kind that cannot be written, only remembered, only passed on, only lived.
There are no clocks in the longhouse, no calendars, no hourly forecasts printed and pinned to walls, and yet time is capped, softly, steadily, in the changing shape of the wind, the weight of clouds, the ache behind the eyes. She feels it before she sees it, the shift. In her joints, perhaps, or the tightness at the base of her spine. A tug in the bones, something that pulls inward like thread gathering fabric. She knows this feeling, has known it since childhood. A storm is coming. It might not arrive today or even tomorrow, but it is on its way, as surely as the sun will set behind the ridge. And so, she adjusts. She moves the drying fish farther under the eaves. She checks the straps on the goat's shelter. She calls the children in a little earlier than usual, brushing mud from their boots with a knowing look. Outside, the sky is unusually still. The birds have gone quiet. The air smells metallic, not of iron, but of tension. Something waiting to break. This is not magic. It is not superstition. It is memory, felt in the marrow. Her grandmother could do the same. So could her mother. She remembers watching them, those women, the way they would pause, mid-sentence, mid-stitch, and narrow their eyes at the horizon. The way they'd step outside, rub their palms on their skirts and say, "Might rain." Not with fear, just fact. She's learned to trust that pause, to pay attention not only to the sky, but to what isn't there. The missing bird song, the silence between branches, the way the dog won't settle near the door. Some days the wind speaks loud and long, galloping in from the sea, tearing at thatched roofs, sending smoke sideways through the chimney. It screams its arrival. Other days, it tiptoes in, like fog, wrapping the longhouse in a hush so deep it feels like a dream. And she listens to both. She watches the clouds not just for color, but for shape. Are they stacked high like loaves rising, or thin, streaked, torn like old cloth? She knows what it means when the air feels warm, but smells like snow.
or when the bees cluster tightly at the hive, or when the cows refuse to settle, shifting restlessly in the night. The land speaks in 1,000 quiet ways. The river rises more than usual after a mild winter. The moss spreads faster on the northern stones. The soil crumbles differently beneath her fingers when a dry spell is coming. And her body speaks too. A stiffness in her fingers might mean frost by morning. A heavy ache in her hips could mean sleet on the way. The elders call it weather bones. Not science, but not foolishness either. Just lived truth, passed quietly through generations. She doesn't write it down. She doesn't need to. It's in the rhythm of her days, in how she chooses which logs to bring in from the woodpile, in how she folds the woolen cloaks and places them near the door, in how she leans out the doorway at dusk, staring at the stars, or at where the stars should be, and murmurs, Even the smell of the sea changes. Brine thickens on the breeze before a coastal squall. She recognizes it and acts without panic. The bread is baked early, the meat salted more thoroughly. The oil lamp is filled and checked twice. The shutters drawn before dark. Not because she fears what's coming, but because she respects it. This is the difference. She does not fight the weather. She does not try to beat it. She lives with it, the same way she lives with time and animals and the slow aging of her hands. In spring, she reads the rain, not just as water, but as blessing or warning. In summer, she watches for thunder. In autumn, she tests the wind with a wet finger and decides how far the children may walk. In winter, her breath becomes its own weather, visible, steady, cold, but alive. And the others trust her. They ask her, without words, when to travel, when to stay, when to wrap another blanket around the baby. She answers, without needing to, because the answers are woven into her movements, into the way she knots the rope, or lingers by the doorway, or stops mid-task to watch a cloud pass over the sun. She doesn't need instruments. Her instruments are older. Her body, her eyes, the way her feet sink into the earth. Even now, as twilight settles, she knows what tomorrow will bring. She can feel it in her shoulder, the one she broke as a girl, mending a fence in late winter. It throbs gently like a drumbeat. There will be sleet before dawn. Not much, but enough. And so she rises, checks the door, tucks in the animals, sets aside the thickest wool. The others will sleep through the storm, and in the morning, the ground will be rimmed in ice, but the house will be warm, because she listened. And the weather always tells her what she needs to know.
The fire has burned low, only soft embers now, breathing in the dark. The longhouse is still, and though the day has passed, it does not truly end. Not in this quiet, not in the way her stories linger long after her footsteps fade. She is gone now, of course. The woman we've been following, she lived her days 1,000 years ago. Her hands are no longer kneading dough or weaving wool. The smoke from her hearth has long since dissolved into the sky. And yet, do you feel it? The thread is not broken. It is stretched, yes, thin in places, but still strong.
still warm. Because her world, so distant in time, never truly left us. It lives on, not in grand monuments or epic tales, but in small things, the kinds of things we almost overlook. The scent of herbs in a kitchen, the sound of wooden tools clinking softly in a drawer, the ritual of rising early, setting the day in motion with simple, deliberate acts. You see, the Viking homemaker left behind no titles, no books, no carved runestones bearing her name, but she left patterns, ways of being, rhythms of care. She taught through doing, through repeating, through passing knowledge hand to hand, woman to woman, child to grandchild. And though her life may seem impossibly far from ours, marked by cold winters and long, smoky halls, her legacy is all around. It's in the patience we summon when mending a torn shirt, in the way we stir soup slowly with intention, in the way we pause before weather, testing the wind, narrowing our eyes, just as she did. Even now, in this modern world of glowing screens and humming appliances, there are echoes of her labor. When you wrap a blanket tightly around someone you love, that is her. When you line the pantry with jars, stacking them just so for the colder months ahead, that is her too. She survives in the act of noticing, of listening to the rhythm of a household, the small needs before they are spoken, the wisdom of repetition. And perhaps that is the most powerful kind of memory, not one of words or records, but of presence, lived memory, embodied memory, quiet legacy. Her world was not perfect. There was hardship, loss, moments of bitterness, but she endured, not with armor or sword, but with rhythm, with care, with the slow, uncelebrated heroism of keeping things going, of making things last, of paying attention. And maybe, just maybe, her deepest wish was not to be remembered by name, but by feeling, that we would walk through the world a little more gently, tend our homes with more reverence, sit in stillness more often, watching the fire fade, listening to the hush between raindrops, that we would touch our own lives and the lives of those around us with the same steadiness that she once brought to a clay bowl, a spindle, a crying child in the night. There is no monument to her, but there doesn't need to be. The monument is us. How we care, how we endure, how we make beauty out of what is plain. The embers glow low now, and though we must leave the longhouse, we do not leave her. She walks with us in the thread we pull through the needle, in the bread we need, in the silence we keep when the storm draws near. So, sleep well, traveler of time. Rest in the warmth of her memory, and when you wake, may you carry something quiet from her world into your own, not loudly, not proudly, but faithfully, as she did, always.